what would you say you found in terms of the kind of readiness for e-cargo bikes, whether that's across businesses or local governments who have to provide for these new kinds of option?
I think the research really highlighted for us the importance of kind of socio-technical change, that there will be certain innovations where the level of change required in terms of practices isn't that great. So an electric van is probably, apart from charging it, it's probably a familiar experience to using a diesel van, say. But when you switch into an e-cargo bike, then the person's no longer driving, they're now cycling. The storage space is different. You're probably going to make more journeys more frequently with smaller loads, and you're going to have to think about what loads you can carry. So that kind of transition from an electric a diesel van to an e-cargo bike is actually requires quite a lot of kind of preparation and thought and changes in practices. And I think that we found that's where the challenge was for businesses. So they might say, yes, we think these are really good, but we don't think our staff are confident enough to cycle with these vehicles, or we don't think it could carry enough stuff. We'd have to think about how we would manage those loads. We'd have to think about whether we could carry hot food, for example. So to answer the question, I think it's fair to say there isn't a kind of high degree of readiness, but there seems to be quite a lot of acceptance that these were things that could be done, that we could make these changes in businesses. It's just that they're more challenging than some other technologies might be, if you see what I mean.
Moving, let's say, potentially drivers into becoming cyclists on an e-cargo bike is an incredibly complex transition for not only the individual to undertake, but also for businesses to support those individuals in undertakings. There's challenges there, but also just in this is a rapidly evolving area of technology that we're seeing every year. We're getting new designs of e-cargo bikes coming out, smaller batteries that kick out more power for longer. I don't think we've yet reached the sort of peak of the technological advancement of the bikes just yet. They seem to be more and more investments coming into them. It seems more than ever over the last year, perhaps going back to a couple of things we cited earlier, those reasons that the bikes proving themselves. So I think over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see some quite ingenious developments in terms of the technology of the bikes that may start to address some of these challenges that Graeme brought up.
It's developing, but it's really dependent on some of those landscape issues. And I think that cities have to be accommodating cycling as well. From speaking to businesses, even however good the bikes are, cities still are going to have to make room for cycling. And it's not necessarily the same room that's needed for kind of conventional cycling or how we might imagine cycling, but it might be wider routes in particular that are also really valuable when you talk about inclusion in cycling, because you might want to be able to make space for adapted cycles so that more people can cycle. So it's really important that cities understand their role in changing that kind of landscape so that there's space for e-cargo bikes.
That feels to me like a massive challenge.
Yeah.
But a really important one, because if we're putting a lot of cycling infrastructure in right now, but are we thinking about all of the use cases for cycle infrastructure?